this already, but talk to me. How does all this feel?
I think I think with my kids in my room, if I do the chart with them after we read the story,
Mhm.
you have to do the characters, the setting, problem solution, and break it down to the details. To me, they remember it more. Just reading them a book and talking about it is not as making me sit down writing sentences about it that they're telling me.
And then by the time they get to second grade, we're giving them a graphic organizer and we're letting them fill it out and then we go,
And we talked about this morning, we have anticipation guide. And if you give them an anticipation guide before you start even, you talk about the story before you ever even start reading the story, or even look at the story, then they're putting down their thoughts on what could happen just by looking at the title of the story.
It's just a little true false anticipation guide.
I'm a big advocate of any approach that you take that will ask students to do during the reading what the reading standards are asking them to do. One very practical thing to do along those lines, and I think that what you said about kind of like having a chart where you said character development and setting, that's reading standard 3 for fiction texts. Organizational structure, problem solution, that's reading standard 5 for informational text. The details, that's reading standard 1. So you are basically you're doing what we're doing, but you're using a slightly different tool. Fine. I mean, this tool is not perfect, right? I mean, this is one option out of many.
But I find that more of mine that don't respond to the story, after we've done it a while, they'll want their sentence up there. They'll finally answer up and say, well, da-da-da-da-da, and you think, oh, wow,
Yes.
really?
Is it-
You are kidding.
That's to me one of the most encouraging things about teaching. Yeah,
Yeah.
those kids who seem to
Because they
be
just,
reluctant to talk or not in it, or doesn't mean they're not in it. And to see them come forward with a really good response to the text that we're reading is very heartening. It's one of the great moments in teaching, I think. It's great to see.
So really, us focusing on like this one standard, $100 standard is restricting them from, I mean, because that's how,
You know what's interesting along those lines, and I've been thinking about that because they're pretty related, the reading standards. Let's go
they
take a
are.
look. So I was chatting with a few of you about this point about relationship, right? So for instance, let's say that this were a real area of focus for one particular week. Reading standard 6 for literary texts, where you've got to think about how various points of view are similar and different. Are other reading standards also in view when it comes to reading standard 6? In other words, in order to do what reading standard 6 is asking about, do you have to do any of this other stuff?
You have to.
You have to.
You have to.
You have to. And so you can bet that if that's the standard in view, I'm going to have a bunch of discussion questions about it, but I'm going to lead up to it, just like we did. I'll have some key detail questions, standard 1. Definitely reading standard 3. Character development. Why is character development essential in order to address reading standard 6?
Because they have to know what the characters are and what they have to know all about that character.
Yeah, for sure.
How
So-
they think, how they feel.
That's right. So I think that the real opportunity that we have is to view these as highly related. Highly related. And I tell you what, getting students to do what 6 is asking, that's not easy. We get them there over time. I really like the graphic organizers and the charts and so on and so forth. Any tool that you use to get students to think through in depth for any text what our reading standards are asking them to do, I'm an advocate of. What I'm not an advocate of are questions that really bear no real relationship to the reading standards, which I see sometimes. Or questions that are just aligned with reading standard 1 and that's it. That's too narrow. You gotta bring in the others as well. Does that make sense?
If you want them to understand the whole story and everything that's going on in it, they have to be able to do all this.
Yes, well said, extremely well said. Now I want to be clear. We might not get through all of these in any given text.
No. Because not all stories are made to be that way.
You're so right. All right.
They kinda gotta be able to do 1, 2, and 3 before they can do 4, 5, and 6.
Bingo. Extremely well said. It's going to be really hard to do 4, 5, and 6 unless you feel pretty confident when it comes to 1, 2, and 3. That's extremely well said. And I think you could argue the same thing when you get down to 7, 8, and 9. Yeah. By the way, I'm not going to do 9 on just one text, am I? Does that make sense?
And that's one of the
That's how
things,
we
they
do.
love comparing two texts, or 3 at the time.
And you do a very good job of that.
Thank you.
Or let me rephrase. It doesn't make sense. I think you could do this on one text, but the kids will have to have read a related text prior to. Does that make sense? So, I mean, I think that's fine. But I'm not going to just ask a question. I think, let me rephrase. It's going to be impossible for me to really get at the spirit of Standard 9 unless I bring in a second text.
So if our power standard was compare and contrast, it would be hard to really just test compare and contrast without having some of those other questions leading up to.
Oh, I think most definitely. You know, for instance,
So when we're testing the power standard to be compare and contrast,
yeah,
how are you gonna have enough questions to really know if they can compare and contrast?
well, yeah, you know what's interesting is that I think that you could, isn't Standard 6 also a compare and contrast?
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, Standard 3, characters plural form. Can't you compare and contrast characters? Not even necessarily from points of view, but more so Standard 1, like who, what, when, where, like just basically what are they like? For instance, I've asked second grade kids many, many times when it comes to too much chocolate, what's Kiara like and what's Tyler like? This is not really a point of view question. It's more of like who they are. And I don't want you to tell me how they look, that they're a boy or a girl, how old are they? I want you to tell me kind of like how they are inside. Like, are they mean? Are they nice? Are they stingy? Are they generous? Things like that. Character traits is what I'm getting at. So in other words, a bunch of these reading standards are asking me, and students, should I say, to compare and contrast. So if the main idea for 1 week or 2 weeks or however long the duration is to compare and contrast, there are a lot of standards that call for that. Does that make sense? All right. But yes, I think one of the points that we just can't ignore is that it's going to be really hard to do 9 unless you've shown some understanding of the kind of stuff that 1 through 8 is asking. Sometimes I see that. Sometimes I see, okay, I'm going to get out of the gate here and ask you a question, comparing and contrasting the theme of this story versus another one that we've read earlier. I mean, that's really hard to lead with.
So they would have to master those standards almost before you
Yeah, and I think so. I think that's reasonable. And, you know, one of the things that comes to my mind when it comes to mastery is this. Yeah, that's right. I think one of the great ways to assess mastery of the reading standards is just to ask kids discussion questions. If they are struggling on a discussion question related to any of these reading standards, chances are very high that they're going to struggle on a multiple choice question that's connected to the same standard, or a short writing question that's connected to the same standard. So I have tons of pieces of available evidence to me. Discussion is not to be overlooked, in my view, when it comes to evidence of mastery. You learn a lot from hearing your students do this. Did we talk, no, I talked about this with 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. One of the most heartening findings about this is that it is some of the effects of talking on reading comprehension are highest with bilingual and multilingual learners and students from economic poverty. That is really, really good news. Wouldn't you hypothesize that that would be the case? That the effects of this on reading comprehension are highest among students who are bilingual or multilingual, or students from economic poverty. Wouldn't you hypothesize that would be the case? Several of you are shaking your heads. Why would you agree with that? What does this do, in other words?
It teaches it, it makes it learn.
It comes in a lot of different words and forms.
You are exposing your students to a very high concentration of vocabulary, tons of modeling and collaboration. Okay. We're going to keep going. This can look a lot of different ways, what we're doing. It doesn't have to look just like this template. Like I said, it's the 3rd time I said it, but it bears repeating. Any tool that you use to get these kind of questions in front of students, I'm a big advocate of. Huge advocate of that. All right, let's keep going. We're going to shift over to nonfiction, though. Ruby Bridges happens to be a heroine of mine, almost like none other. I mean, what a historical figure. So here's what I want you to do. You've been through this template once, and now I'm going to ask you as a team to go through it a second time. So what I want you to do is read it, and then with your teammates, map out just a few pre-reading questions, 2 or 3 discussion questions, and I'll put the 1st grade standards for informational texts up on the overhead, and then finish it up with just a short writing question. Okay? Here's a hint. Tie both your discussion questions and your short writing question to the reading standards. And remember, that scaffolded approach, where you start with the less rigorous and you move to the more rigorous, applies here as well. Okay? Sorry to interrupt. Really, the only standard that is out of bounds here would be 9. Only because we only have one text.
something was wrong with her or now. She looked like, she's dressed like Palestine, or.
First thing you're gonna ask.
They didn't say like somebody did it while they were ready, that they were shouting at her. She said people didn't know.
We can't hear you. Really, still fast, Kathy.
I'll be thinking, no discussion. Discussion.
Well, you gotta do the math, I mean,
New number one and say name of.
what is this story mainly about? That's gonna be one of them.
See, I can read that. The next year, study it.
Well, and then you wanna talk about the details, why were people shouting when she walked into school?
Because it says,
You could say, have you ever been scared of? Really?
no, they didn't really go inside the facility.
I gave it.
Who just got it?
Yeah, had to get it there.
Well, I should take that hospital back to the connection fund. Just so that it works. Well, next, what changed?
It doesn't say that.
What changed their mind? Yeah.
And the people were shouting at her because she was black.
Why was she scared?
And she's like, then you do it.
She doesn't show that she's scared, but the word actually, everything that happened within private. Yeah. Really wanted to go to school.
One of the things why do you think this passage is entitled, why do you think this is called? Is that right?
Yeah, first I was.
That's hard to explain. Was she really tall?
But you tell them it's because
I know,
you have to explain it.
she had a face on better. Yeah, walking tall. That second day.
This is a good and a bad thing.
Okay, we got plenty of discussion questions.
About the next one.
You could pick one of those.
All right,
This is a response. What is a response?
do you know what? Get that background check, no worry.
Well, what would we expect? When they can respond. One thing you're talking about, you're discussing the questions in the story, and the next thing is there.
Hey, I'm late. We're very conservative.
3, 4, 6, 12.
This was probably.
It was like this. 3, 4.
I can't remember. I don't think she ever did that.
All right.
Real school, is what I'm saying. But it wasn't. Yeah. She did go to that, but I'm talking about a big, I'm talking about a big school that has a lunchroom and, you know what I mean? Other than it being a house setting, you know. Yeah, but I think it was, yeah. Or how do you think with their children?
Candy, you want some of that? Hear that?
Where did she go?
But it's something. I didn't tell mine. I'll put mine on
Tell
That's
her,
right.
tell her to get ready.
Well,
After she went, say on the look.
They do. You always stick with gold, aren't you? She said, I can remember, the police coming.
No, she said,
no, it was something about the muffler.
yeah, she said the mother.
Because it's a big.
Cookies and drinks over in the cooler over here.
I made the cookies. Or a rice place. Okay.
You did bring them in?
Okay, because I was thinking about Monday. We got things
Okay, about another minute.
Okay, so after reading, okay, you can go right here. How is this different than you can afford that? This is different than a new student watching today. Does that make sense? A lot of them. I had bought, I had playground, I don't have kids. Well, that's what we're trying to get. I mean, you gotta go with the parents that want
Okay, let's do this. We'll have this team give us 2 of their pre-reading questions. This team, 1 of your discussion questions. This team, 1 of your discussion questions. And that team, your one writing question. Okay. Did you create a writing question? Do we need to follow?
We'll take the writing question, you can give them ours.
Okay, you do a discussion question.
Okay, all right.
We know that.
Okay.
We got you.
This
We
team,
didn't know we were all.
get us going on pre-reading.
How would you feel if you had to go to a new school?
How would you feel if you had to go to a new school? Good pre-reading question. That seems an obvious one, but a good one. Don't get me wrong. That's a really good question. And another one?
What do you think segregation means?
Ooh. What do you think segregation?
New vocabulary.
New vocabulary term.
They don't know.
Pre-reading can be a good spot to introduce some new vocabulary. Yep, those are nice, very nice. All right, discussion question.
Describe the difference between Ruby's first day and her experience the next day. The next year, I'm sorry, for the third.
Yeah, I love that question. Describe Ruby's experience her first year and her second year at this school. That one connects with which standard? Yeah, definitely 3. Another nice example of a compare and contrast. Solid, really good. Although, I would probably get students started, especially because we're talking first grade kids, with probably just like a more basic question.
Right,
And I want to,
considering we've already gone through.
well said. What would be a good basic question to start students off with? A good basic discussion question.
Main character.
Yeah. What about Ruby? Do you want to ask students? Say it again.
Describe Ruby.
Yeah, what is she like? You might focus in on the first couple of paragraphs and ask students how you think she felt going to school her first year. That must have been horrific. So scary. And what bravery, which ties in, of course, to character traits. Right. Okay, another discussion question.
They
Wait,
were doing the other discussion question.
another discussion question.
What event took place that allowed her and the other black students to go to school?
Oh yeah, good. What event took place that allowed Ruby and other black students to go to the same school in the second year? Or even the first year? Good question, really good question. That's a really good question to get students to think about key details. Yeah. Let me throw out one more discussion question. For 7, I've said to students, do you think the picture was taken during Ruby's first year at the school or at her second year at the school?
Second. I don't know.
That's a good one to get students thinking about the relationship between visuals, illustrations, for instance, and the main text itself.
Oh, it's definitely not the first day.
It's probably not the first day. Yeah. Probably not the first day. And then our writing question. Kindergarten, take us away.
How do you think Ruby felt going to school with all white students?
Oh, yeah. How do you think she felt?
I would like to hear children's responses to that, because a lot of them will be, that would be interesting to
Yeah.
listen to.
Yeah. Yep.
Since they've never known that.
They usually go, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Why wouldn't they let them, you know?
What's wrong with them?
Yeah.
Which is some indication of the progress we've made. Okay. we've read, we've talked, and now we've read. Here's one I've asked first grade kids. After we've read and talked about this text, and I'll show you some actual student responses in just a second. Of course, the first order of business is to do reading standard 1 on this prompt, which is, what are the key details? What is it saying? What do you understand? What do you have questions about? So I'm in the planning and pre-writing aspect of the writer's process here. Nice to talk about with students. Do you think your first graders would encounter any roadblocks? Which, I'm not afraid of roadblocks. I try to be cognizant of them so we can talk about them. What do you think?
Just the definition of courage, right? What does it mean? What does it look like? Example.
Do you think that most students would have an understanding of bravery?
There's a Disney movie called Brave.
Sometimes you're asked to be brave when you go to the dentist or the doctor. What does that mean? It's frightening, isn't it? Who wants to sit in a dentist's chair? Who wants to go get a booster shot? Not me. So talking about courage and bravery, if you feel that your students are on point when it comes to that, then you move forward. Okay, what about this sentence here? Use details from Walking Tall to support your answer. Some of you have faces like, not sure about that one. I'm not surprised. That's a tough sentence. Good one to talk about. What does that mean?
That's what walking tall is. What do you think walking tall means? Why do you think that is the title of this passage?
Oh, yeah.
That's what we said too.
Yeah, that's a good question. Why is this actually a really good title for this text? Your details should really show what? Think about what you're being asked to do here.
What the story's about?
Is it what the story's about?
Well, to get to support the main idea.
Oh, right, yes, of course. You have to have an understanding of what this article is about to get the appropriate support. The question is asking you this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your details should show what? Believe me, answer this simple question. It's a good one to have 6-year-olds answer. Get them talking about the prompt. This might be a painfully obvious question to answer. Please answer it anyway. How many times have you been sitting in an undergraduate course or a graduate course and a question comes out, it's like, gosh, that's so obvious. I'm not going to answer it. Please answer it.
Who Ruby was?
Say it again.
Who Ruby was?
Yeah, I mean, the details should really show who Ruby was. Namely, did she have courage or not? Planning and pre-writing. Let's see what we get. Draft 1. And there's a lot of good writing and structure that can occur between draft 1 and draft 2. So here goes. Oh, I do want to say this. Notice dual alignment here. Not only to one of the reading standards, but to one of our social studies content standards. Anytime I have a chance to do that, I'm doing it. Integrate. I'm just working more efficiently. All right. Questions about that? Alignment. You know, it's interesting. Depending on, or based on the student answer, you're going to have evidence of mastery of both of those standards, which is really nice. Okay, that's what you get. Draft 1. We've got some work to do, don't we?
Why would she bring?
Yeah. How do you know that? What did we learn about in the story? What did she do that makes you think that she was brave?
She went inside. With the
Well,
police.
she,
was brave.
she walked in with police,
Walked in with the police, and what were people doing as she walked into the school?
shouting.
They were shouting at her. Think about how scary that would be. Oh, one of my pre-reading questions was, has anybody ever been really mad at you before? How does that feel? Not good at all. Not a good feeling at all. What about this one? Getting there, yes. Getting there. By the way, both of these students, they're creating nice sentences. And what I've done is I just took the handwritten responses and just typed them up. The handwriting was generally pretty good. Sometimes it was a little hard to decipher, but I'm not scoring handwriting. I'm evaluating the standards in question. I can't remember. Handwriting's not one of our standards, is it?
Not anymore. Nope.
Yeah, it is on second grade.
Second grade, you got a little calligraphy?
Writing.
If this is what you got in